Hello， 大家好，我是 Toii 的 Alan，我们 Toii 主要在制作 AR 还有 Location Based 游戏的开发。那今天很高兴有机会来到 APGS 跟大家分享我们团队的一些开发制作的经验。那我今天主题会分成6个，首先会跟大家简介 AR Location Based 游戏发展的案例跟实例。那第2个会跟大家介绍Google AR Core 的应用简介。第3个会跟大家介绍圣地巡礼。第4个会跟大家介绍我们团队实际开发的案例。第5个会跟大家介绍我们 AR Location Based 游戏是如何连接到商家还有商圈跟广告的实例。那最后跟大家介绍 AR 跟 Location Based 游戏的发展的挑战。好，那我们进到首先第一个部分。首先第一个部分是AR Location Based 游戏的应用跟实例。那想到 AR 就是 Augmented Reality 跟 Location Based Service。这样结合的游戏最有名的应用，应该就是大家都听过，也应该都玩过的。那台湾还有一部分的群众还一直在玩的，就是Pokemon Go。那我们看到除了 Pokemon Go，Pokemon Go 也是一个很成功，商业上也很成功的游戏。那除了 Pokemon Go 之外呢，我们也看到有同样 Niantic Labs， 他们也推出了 Harry Potter。那以及大家可能比较少知道 Minecraft， 他们以前也在做 AR Location Based 的游戏，他们叫 Minecraft Earth。那前几个月已经有一些官方有露出一些实际的 demo 的案例了。那其实它的应用还蛮酷的，那会建议大家可以实际上网看 Minecraft Earth 他们之前推出的影片，他们做到的是Crowd AR， 所以基本上一样是 Minecraft 的概念，大家可以建造自己的就是挖矿，然后建造自己的城堡，建造自己的建筑，然后那些东西是可以 based on real map， 然后呢是可以跟因为它是 Crowd AR， 所以其他玩家在真实的世界也是可以看到大家在 AR 里面盖出来的东西，所以它应用技术是非常酷的。那接下来因为时间关系，接下来跟大家介绍第2个方向是 Google AR Core 的简介跟应用。那很幸运的，我们去年有被邀请到去参加 Google AR Summit。那他们第一届是 Google 第一次办这个 AR Summit， 而且他竟然是选在台湾台北来办 AR Summit， 那其实有吸引到其他国家或者是 developer 来看，然后 Google 自己也很 surprise， 原来只是想说在台湾试试看举办这样 AR Summit， 可没想到来的团队跟厂商都非常多。那 Google 为什么要把台湾当做办 Google AR Summit 第一次举办的地方呢？其实有一个很大的原因是 Google在前几年买了HTC 的手机部门嘛，所以 Google 要推自己的品牌 Google Pixel。那在 Google Pixel 里面有很重要一点就是他们希望可以跟相机的镜头，因为现在 AR 基本上都是透过mobile device， 那最多就是相机了，所以呢他们是希望可以透过 Google Pixel 可以跟更多的 AR 技术或是 AR 的相关的应用来结合。所以大家如果有 Pixel 手机刚好业配一下 Google Pixel 手机的话，其实可以看到我们镜头有加了更多 AR 的应用跟功能。那我在里面这里简单的分享几个里面 Google AR Core 有提到他们接下来会应用的技术。除了目前大家常用的 LBS 以外呢，他们就是可以辨识平面嘛，这已经很常见的技术了。那他们也可以来开始辨识空间了，所以它会让你的镜头然后去开始认识你这个所处在的空间，它的样貌，那以及光线，因为他们有感光元件，所以这个东西也是可以拿来当做开发者或是游戏 designer 拿来制作成游戏的一个元素。那另外一个就是也是最常被拿来做成游戏的，就是他们有 facial tracking 的功能。那这样功能其实我们已经可以看到在最近其实 Instagram 上面有一些很红的一些很简单的应用 App， 那些都很容易 go viral。那些基本上就是用的脸部辨识的 AR 的功能，那也有像譬如说美图拍，他们也是用了相当多的这样的 AR facial recognition 的功能这样子。那我们接下来就进到第3个了。我们当初会做 AR location based 的关键，其实是参考了 也一开始也没有说真的是参考，一开始应该是想说我们这样做出来以后，没想到跟一个日本人很熟悉的词，那台湾当然也很熟悉的词，就是叫做胜利巡礼，因为我们是做 AR location base 嘛，所以就很容易用游戏的方式把玩家或是把粉丝带到某一些特定的我们想要让他们到达地点。那这样的行为如果跟动漫结合或是游戏结合的话，他们在日本就叫胜利巡礼，台湾当然也是直接翻作叫做胜利巡礼，所以一样的方式其实是真的可以有效的把玩家导到希望玩家可以设计到希望他们可以去的地方。所以讲到圣地巡礼的话呢，大家可以猜一下，譬如说日本的话，动漫的话，最有名的圣地巡礼，我们从第3名开始来猜，其实大家可能都有听过这些很有名的动画。那搞不好有些人到日本旅游的时候，真的会把这些景点当作是他们想要去的地点。那我们先从第3名开始来公布咯。那首先大家可以猜一下日本最红，去年或前年最红的圣地巡礼第3名是哪一部动画呢 ？OK， 它的答案是是那个 Spirit Away， 中文叫做神隐少女。所以当然它的里面的汤屋是参考了一间日本的真的汤屋来设计的。那当然有些人会说台湾9份也是他们参考的对象之一，所以也有些日本人相信，所以也有一些日本人会真的来台湾，然后9份对他们是一个很红的景点，他们会来台湾看那些地方。那接下来第2名公布咯，第2名圣地巡礼的地方呢是这部前年应该是前年吧，非常的红。那它叫做你的名字，所以很多人会到飞弹高山那里去，或是它其实前半部有很多在东京的场景，所以大家会真的跑到那里看。然后像大家知道最后结局嘛，它有男女主角交汇错身的那一个那个叫什么不是楼梯，就它只是一般的楼梯，可是很多人现在会到那个楼梯上里去拍照去打卡这样子，所以变成一个热门的景点了。那第1名这个想必台湾很多人都应该不陌生，就是灌篮高手那个平交道，那个是非常非常就是在海边嘛，主题曲那个平交道那个也是非常非常红的。所以我们发现到真的可以成功的用动漫或是游戏方式把玩导到那样设计到导到那样的地方，所以这就是我们一开始投入去做 AR location base 的原因了。那讲一下我们自己的案例，我们前几年有跟高雄捷运合作，那跟高捷少女的 IP 结合，那我们推出了高捷少女的1代跟2代，然后那时候其实是获得许多的好评的。那我们那时候还不知道，我们直到推出以后，就意外的有许多来自日本的玩家，然后因为我们那时候就是你完成所有任务以后，你就可以到左营站或者是美丽岛站，然后去换取一个纪念品，就是可以跟 AR 互动的一卡通。那我们那时候收集到的时候，因为他们要填他们的地址跟名字，所以我们看到意外的发现了，填地址名的时候，很多人是日本人。那我们那时候就访问了一些日本人，说，你们为什么会来台湾？为什么会想玩这样的游戏？那他们的回应是说，他们觉得我们这样的游戏设计很有趣，因为它会让他们想到日本的游戏，日本叫做 Stamp Rally，Stamp Rally 就是Stamp 就是盖章嘛。那 Rally 就是像到处去进行一个活动这样子，所以他觉得我们的像是数位版的 Stamp Rally， 那日本是对 Stamp Rally 这样的游戏这样的互动是很熟悉的，那像盖章这种 Stamp Rally 很可能就是，譬如说是大家知道日本人很会设计印章，所以他们可能会亲自用周末的时候，那爸爸妈妈带着小朋友，那到各个不同的车站去收集那样特别印章，那完成之后就可以换到一个纪念品，它就我们像是数位版的 Stamp Rally。那另外想要跟大家分享，就是因为我们有日本玩家嘛，所以我们后来就是很幸运的就可以跟日本来合作，所以我们后来是跟日本的博多运河城，那它博多运河城是在九州，那如果有去九州玩的网友或者是粉丝的话，他们也会选博多运河城当做他们其中一个经过的地点这样子。然后我们也有看到，甚至有游戏我们不只吸引到台湾人跑到日本去玩我们这样的游戏，我们也发现甚至有日本的粉丝从东京飞到九州博多，那去玩这样的游戏，那甚至就安排几天到九州那里去绕了几圈，去当做观光旅游的体验这样子。那在台湾的话，我们也有因为是高阶猎旅嘛，所以我们也有跟 高雄在地的，譬如说85大楼来合作，那玩家只要买票上去，买一张合作的套票之后，他就可以上去换一杯饮料，跟换游戏里面限定的道具或游戏里面限定的角色。我们有看到这样操作也是蛮成功的。那另外就是跟商圈跟夜市的结合这样子。那进行到我们的最后一部分了，就是 AR Location Base 这样游戏的挑战。那其实我去年在写讲稿的时候，并还没有出现到这个挑战。那这个挑战今天很明显，就是现在疫情这样子的话，那这样子鼓励玩家出去的活动，是不是比较不容易进行的？答案是是的，因为我们的确受到蛮多的冲击。我觉得台湾可能还好一点，因为台湾大家现在控制的不错。那我们也看到台湾大家出去，是愿意出去的。可是，譬如说，像我们有计划把我们几款 AR Location Base 游戏推到国外的时候，跟国外发行商讨论的时候，其实他们就会变得比较保守了。那这部分可能也是需要考虑进去的。那另外一部分就是像 Pokemon Go 或是刚刚讲的 Harry Potter 或者是 Minecraft， 这些都是很大的 IP， 所以甚至我们一开始跟高雄捷运合作高阶少女，其实它也是背上 IP， 所以人家愿意，大家对那些角色有认同感，那有代入感的，所以有情感上的 emotional connection， 所以他们愿意去找他们愿意这样出去。但如果没有 IP 的加持的话，其实单纯推 AR Location Base 游戏，其实是真的比一般的手游或是一般的游戏还要来的费力很多的。这也是我们也有观察到的。那另外一个就是它另外一个 AR Location Base 的缺点就是另外是很难做globalization， 就是像我们现在有几款游戏想要推到国外的时候，那个设点就会是一个问题了。那像我们之前去韩国参展的时候，因为我们游戏都是使用 Google Maps， 所以我们遇到的困难就是韩国是有 Google Maps， 但是点没有像台湾到处都查得到，它变得就是不好用，然后当地人也不会用，他们好像是用Never 还是其他韩国公司的 Map 的功能。那更不用说我们用 Google Maps， 我们之前有中国的发行商很有兴趣，可是就是完全没办法，因为他们除非翻墙或是用 VPN 才能够玩我们的游戏，就会变得非常的困难这样子。那如何让 AR Location Base 的游戏能够成功的做 globalization 呢？这点也是我们正在研究跟设计的一些机制来克服这个问题。那我们最近有出一款新的也是结合 AR Location Base 游戏，那它是比较偏悬疑恐怖解谜的游戏，那它叫都市传说冒险团。我们就是用了一个新的机制，可以让世界上大部分的玩家都可以在周遭来进行 AR Location Base 的游戏，所以我们自己给它定义叫做新的重新诠释了LBS 的方式。那这样的游戏我们是觉得蛮有趣的，而且目前也没有看到有其他游戏团队或是相关的应用在用这样的技术的，所以我觉得这会是一个去解决又可以 localize 又可以 globalize 的一个方式。那有兴趣的玩家可以参考我们的那一款游戏叫做都市传说冒险团，那反应也还相当不错这样子。所以今天有简单跟大家介绍到AR Location Base 的游戏，然后以及它的 potential， 像刚刚讲 Google 很喜欢可以推，而且很喜欢在台湾可以推加强这一块功能。那以及它一些可能遇到一些挑战，以及我们一些跟实际商业上的实力。所以因为今天时间很短，所以在这里跟大家粗浅的介绍。如果大家有兴趣的话，都可以欢迎跟我联系。那我能够或者是发我们的 Facebook 的粉丝团叫 Toii。那如果收到需求，我们也会尽快跟大家回复。那很高兴我今天有这个机会可以在这里跟大家分享，谢谢。
Thanks for joining me today. I'm Sharon. I'll be talking about are you getting the most out of your game audio. So before I go into that, let me introduce you a little bit to my company. Imba Interactive has been around for a long time now. We do anything to do with game audio in terms of sound, music, implementation, mixing, the final product. Yeah, so this is my team. They are really a fun bunch. We are based in Singapore. We've been working with many developers across the region, and we love it because we're passionate about games. I am the lead composer of the company, but these days I focus on branding and the business side of things. Our studio, our Foley pits where we record sounds. We perform as our Foley artists as in the sandpit recording footsteps, our vocal booth where we have talents coming over to record, our mixing room where we mix the sounds, we implement, and we make sure that your game sounds good at the end of the day. These are some games that we are working on, have worked on. A lot of them come from Taiwan. No Straight Roads is coming out soon, so check it out. Joe Rifters is already out for pre-orders, so check that out too. So I'll be talking about these categories, but before we go into it, let's find out what is game audio. So game audio is actually very different from movies where it's linear work and it's very predictable. Game audio is not predictable, and it's almost like every time you go into a scene, something is different. It's almost like reality where you go out and have a walk and your footsteps are always sounding different because of different friction, different floor surfaces. So when you have that in mind, designing game audio is actually very different from the normal media outside. So in games, I would say sound, music, and voices are all equally important, but sometimes depending on your game, something will weigh heavier than the other. But if not, all these elements are important to bring out the full potential of your game. Sounds can bring out character, and you gotta ask yourself, is your game a loud game? A soft game? Is it intense? Or is it a light-hearted game? And even the objects in your game, is that object supposed to be dangerous? Do you want your players to know that if it is dangerous or not? Music also doesn't just give you melodies. Yes, it does. There are many games that are known for their melodies and their theme songs, but it gives information to players, and it tells them the environment they are in and the emotions that they should be feeling. All these categories have to work together so that your game will be at its best place. So how can game audio work for you? First of all, you need to recognize that it is of value to your game. There are so many examples like Clash of Clans. The jingle itself is already really iconic. You will already know somebody's playing it if you hear it from afar. So they have won their branding through a jingle. Final Fantasy, the theme song, Metal Gear Solid, when Snake is discovered by an enemy, that sound. Metal Slug, when the voice talent, the voiceover says shotgun, it feels really good when you hear it. Angry Birds, the laughter, the theme song. Left 4 Dead, when you pass by a witch, you don't want to go near it. You know that's the witch when you hear her from afar. The theme song for all the enemies. Candy Crush, even the voiceover, it makes you feel really good when you win something. There's a saying, they say, I am laughing because your laughter is contagious. That's exactly what you want your players to feel. To be influenced by your sound. To not leave your game and forget about your game. You want to leave a mark in your player, to hold on to it even when they are not playing your game. To have a good experience to remember. And to also know that if it is a bad experience, that's not what you want, because they also remember. So today, I'll be talking about different categories. I won't be taking you through a lot of music samples or sound samples, but what I will be sharing would be helping you understand game audio in general and helping you understand what a game audio person is all about as well. So there are many different roles in game audio. A lot of times there is a misconception where if you get a game audio on board, this person will do music and sound and implementation, everything. But that's not the case. For Imba Interactive, we do everything because we are trained that way. But we have many friends in the industry that do not do that. A lot of times they specialize in a game music style, or they're very good at certain things, like even sound design. Some of them, they just record sounds, they don't do certain things, they specialize in different things. So you have to understand your game audio person and what you're hiring him or her or they for. Yeah, so even if you get on a composer, that composer may not understand games. So within games itself, if it's a game composer where they understand game mechanics, then they can compose adaptive music, which I will touch on later. And it will bring a lot more dynamics to your game, and it will fit into your game scenes because it will flow with your game mechanics and your different requirements in your game. And the music will be composed in a way that is not linear, but with a lot of variations for the different scenarios that may or may not happen. So this is a normal music program that composers use. Is Logic Pro, and this is a middleware where game audio people touch. This is essentially this is a middle program where you bridge the game engine and the game audio person, because not all game audio person might know how to program. So this program actually helps them do up all the behaviors for your sounds and music to go according to your game scenes. So in adaptive music itself, there's so many ways to compose, and it is definitely not just one piece itself and then that's it, you put it in your game. Sometimes there is an involvement of like many layers, and within that layers, only certain layers will play in scene 1, and then when they enter scene 2, the next group of layers will come in on top of the first group of layers. So these things can all be implemented in the adaptive functions in this middleware Fmod. Fmod is just one of the middlewares that I'm talking about. Yeah, and of course there are simple ways to do things like crossfading, just crossfading two songs for each other, but there's so much more you can do in terms of knowledge of adaptive music in your game. You don't just want to crossfade. Maybe there's so much more dynamics if you can play with different layers or different variations of melody within one song. Yeah. So the same goes with sound effects. You know, sometimes people misunderstand that they also do music or they do many other things, but sometimes that's not the case. Yeah. It can go really specialized, so it's very important to communicate with the game audio person that you're working with, whether or not they are willing to learn new things, to understand game mechanics. Some people only solely want to compose, and they don't want to they may not understand the difference between linear composition and adaptive compositions. Even sound as well, like adaptive sounds, you need many variations, and the way you design sounds is very different. You will ask about, okay, how many variations do I need for this animation? Is it happening a lot of times? Is it gonna be very boring for the player? And do you have enough of the variations? Did you record enough of that sound so that you can have enough variations? The game audio person sometimes would need the game design document so that they can plan for you. Oh, okay, you have 10 characters. 10 characters, you have 10 animation movements. I need to plan for 10 animation movements, variations for each action. So these things need to be planned earlier, and that's why we encourage our developers to get a game audio person early on, way early, even right from the start, to discuss about things so that both parties can learn about each other's roles, and you will get there because you have the space to do that. For voices, is your game audio person experienced in casting voice talents? Do they know what you need as a developer? Do you know what you want as a developer in terms of voice? So you can take the lead if you know. But if your game audio person is experienced in this area, he can be the person that you trust to get the best performance out of a voice talent. They may have the context of voice talents depending on your budget, and they might be the voice talents themselves. And think about post-production also, because if your game audio person is going to handle all your sounds, they also want the voices to be of the same quality, the same mix in your game, and blend it in nicely. They wouldn't want it to be very different from the game. They can QC for you. Yeah, so communicate with your game audio person. Which brings me to game audio pipeline. After talking about all these categories, I'm sure you know that it is not a simple job. There's many things that go into all these categories, and that's why game audio people, the processors, we don't just give you sounds. There's a lot of things that go into it. We are just as important as your other disciplines, and I would dare say that 50% or more makes up of the game player experience, and game audio plays a really big part in that area. And if you get us in earlier, a lot of things can be solved, a lot of things can be discussed, many things can go a lot smoother, you can learn from each other and get the best work pipeline. And in the end, it will result in what you want, which is a good game and money back, and earn the money that you deserve. Yeah, so pre-production, these are some categories that we look into before we plan for the whole scale of work. Asset sheet is very important for us. A lot of times, we will ask the developer to come up with this first, and then we'll populate it later with the game audio design document that you give us. And we go through this process from asset sheet recording, editing, to putting into the game, putting into the like a place, a Google Drive, sharing it with the developers, putting it into the middleware and then the game engine, and testing it, mixing it, then letting the developers listen to the first draft of mixed sounds and get feedback. So from there, then we will actually go through this process a few times before we get to the final product. We usually don't encourage developers to listen to the sound by itself because it's not meant to be heard alone. It's supposed to work in the game overall and hear it in the game as a whole. If not, it's just not gonna be accurate if the feedback comes in through just hearing one sound. And that's why integration is so important, and we encourage our developers to have the middleware because it's gonna save them time. Your programmer doesn't have to overtime to program audio tools for your sounds. What if your sounds, you have 2,000 sounds and there's gonna be a lot of bugs? This middleware will help you to minimize that and be able to find out all the problems that you may have. It will take over all the behaviors of your sound that your programmer does not need to bother anymore. And your sound person will make sure that it works properly through the middleware and tracks it. And all behaviors can be done through it. Yeah, and you will save so much more time. We can even go into, if your game audio person is experienced enough or he's willing to learn, he can go into your engine and put in reverb zones, ambience emitter. Yeah, so Wise is also another middleware where it's really powerful and you get to do all the things that I've talked about before, these slides. And it's very logical, it's very clean. Fmod is another one. Yeah. And all in all, it's important to have these processes and even get your audio person on board to know these processes if they are not experienced enough, so that you can get the best out of game audio. There are so many platforms that you might be planning to put your game on, so testing is so important, and middleware can actually help you do that, to test your game well and minimize a lot of problems with optimization and bugs. If you do not already know, there are many games that use middleware, and they are, if let's say your budget is below 500k USD, you can use it for free. Yeah, so I would definitely encourage you to use it, learn it, and then get somebody on board to actually use it too, a game audio person. So all in all, get to know your game audio person. Know what you need for your game, and communication is key here. Yeah, it helps when you have someone on board that knows a little bit about music or sound knowledge, but it's okay if you do not have. Just get them on board early, help them understand what you need on the game mechanics, discuss with them, and both of you can learn and progress at the same time, just like any game development team, and you will get to the place that you need to get to. There are also many resources online, like if you go to Twitter, game audio tips hashtag or game audio hashtag, you will already learn a lot of things from those hashtags. There are many experts out there that are giving information and teaching about it, so you can find that out on YouTube by just typing game audio in the search bar. And yeah, so know what game audio can offer to your game and know the right game audio person to be on your team. Middleware is free if it's under 500k, so use it. In our experience, the amount of work put into programming an audio tool is as good as hiring another full-timer. So even if you have a paid model middleware, it will still serve you better in the long run. Yeah. With that, I come to an end to my talk. Thank you for coming for my talk. If you have any questions that you want to ask, do shoot us an email. If not, do visit our website. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, my name is David. Today we're going to be talking about the Zen joy of music making in our title, Hexagroove, Tactical DJ. So what this talk is about is both about game design and music. Perhaps you're a game designer, perhaps you're a musician, or perhaps you've been aspiring to be one of the two. And what I'm going to address is how we can use rules of music to help build a game design experience called flow. I've been in the industry for about 20 years now. I started out working at Rockstar 20 years ago in college, and then I worked in Japan making rhythm and music games for a company called INDIE. Now I live in Stockholm and I have my own studio, Ichigoichie, and we just released our first title, Hexagroove for Nintendo Switch, this past fall. So, what's the topic today? What we're looking for is answering the question, can we create a satisfying gameplay experience that embodies the pleasure of music making? Okay, so what is it about music making that's very satisfying? Looking into the problem space, we know that pleasure in music making is both sensory and communal. So it's something that happens inside of your brain when you're hearing both the frequencies and then if you're performing the music, the challenge involved with playing the right things at the right time. And this happens both with yourself and also when you're playing in a band or if you're playing for a group of people on a stage. So having total expression is a great way to have lots of possibilities with music, but the drawback here is that this can actually exclude many players because there's too many options. If you give the player too many options, they obviously soon get kind of frustrated and walk away from the experience. So what we have to do is add some constraints. Repetitive and predictable music is necessary in this case because if the player can start to build up a sense of knowing what's going to come next with the music, then they feel more familiar with it and it's easier to follow a pattern. So we need some repetitive music. What can we choose? We could choose some dance music because dance music, especially electronic dance music, is built around a series of repetitive loops and beats and adding and removing energy. This is called tension and release, which is a change in energy, and these energy changes over the course of a song can be on two different scales. One is that they can be macroscopic, another is that they can be microscopic and very instantaneous. A macroscopic change could be a rise and fall over the whole song or transitions between song sections, moving from a breakdown to a chorus to an outro or something like that. A microscopic change, on the other hand, is something which is very minute and happens instantaneously. This could be the presence of a beat, or the lack of a beat, or perhaps adding or removing an instrument to change the energy level of a music slightly. So taking a step away from music for a second, we're going to now talk about something called flow. Now, flow is a psychological concept which has existed and been researched for quite some time. And what flow is the complete and energized focus in an activity. what it produces is a high degree of enjoyment and fulfillment in the exercise that the player is engaged with. So for our purposes in a game, we want to induce flow with the player. So how do we induce flow? We can induce flow through a very series of helpers inside of our game. One is to provide clear goals. Another is to have no distractions, so the player is easy to focus on the task at hand. And when they're focusing and engaging with the task, they also need direct feedback. So as soon as the player makes an action, they see whether that action was bad or good and know how to change their gameplay as a result. Also, the process cannot be boring and repetitive. It needs to be challenging so that it scales with the player's interaction level. So speaking about flow scaling, Genova Chen did some work examining on how different skill levels affected the zone of flow for different players. If you plot out a zone of flow on an axis between challenge and abilities, a player which has more hardcore skills and is more used to playing games will want more challenge quickly on. Whereas a novice player does not want to be inundated with the challenge because that could discourage them. So you end up with zones which spread out over this axis in different kind of ways. And you want something which is just the right amount of regulating between having confidence in what you're doing and being caught off guard, needing to do something a bit more difficult. So what we do is we think that not only different skill sets, but we think that having different kinds of feedback can both broaden and reinforce these flow zones. So if the player is given different kinds of tasks and also different kinds of feedback on how well they're doing on those tasks, then there's more material for them to be engaged with the core process of making music. So in Hexagroove Tactical DJ, this is a strategy game for Nintendo Switch. So the main gameplay is based around different sections of strategic moves for choosing musical loops, adding a drum or a synthesizer, or taking those away at just the right time to keep a crowd engaged with the music that you're playing live. We developed it in about a year on a very small team of 5 developers, and this is a game which has couch co-op and is spread over 11 dance genres. So when we started designing Hexagroove, we approached it from a very academic perspective. We started with some hypotheses that we believed we could achieve in Hexagroove. One is that making music could be guided, and another is that it can be fun and easy. And we also believe that in addition to making music accessible to people and performing music to be accessible, the game could assist the performance of the music, and that could also be both challenging and rewarding over the course of the experience, as well as when you collaborate with other people making the music or compete with others at the same time. So this is the picture of the core game loop of Hexagroove. I've blurred out the parts that aren't quite as important for the talk at hand. But the part I want to focus on today is this core interaction that the player has inside the game. So the player has to add and remove musical loops based on a series of rules. And then how well they add and remove those loops and how well they pertain to the rules, we examine, does this make the music performance better or worse? If it makes it better, then the player gets a payoff, they get a boost, they move farther in the stage toward their goal, and they get a lot of positive feedback coming in them, both visual and audio. If it's not, then the crowd gets kind of weak and things end up being kind of stale, and it just kind of works and the crowd gets closer and closer to having to leave the club and you get a game over. So what this ties into is the scoring in Hexagroove. And the scoring here is that you have 3 priorities based on whether you're a basic player to all the way to when you're a Hexagroove master. The first priority that you have is to stay alive. And what this means is assembling and removing pieces of music in real time such that the crowd stays engaged. You give them what they need and change things up just enough without making it too chaotic. If you do this, then the crowd stays and they listen to the end of your set. But if you become too boring because of lack of change or too chaotic because you introduce too much change, then the crowd gets very irritated and they'll quickly leave the club, and that's game over. Once you've mastered being able to stay alive, the next goal that you have is to get an S rank. So in Hexagroove we have a letter grading system, so it goes from C up to S, and this is based around these 6 rules of music which we grade you on. How well the music is flowing, are you changing things at just the right intervals, and do you have a basic sense of rhythm and energy which you're adding to the song. If you can do really well in those 6 rules, then you get an S rank in addition to clearing the level. And then the third priority is to improvise for points. And this is where Hexagroove starts to become more like an action game or a skateboarding game. So there's different tricks that you can do in the game, tricks that DJs use to control the music and add extra spice at certain times. The same way that in a skateboard game you would be doing if you were like doing a kickflip or an ollie or grinding on a rail. So these different goals that you have in Hexagroove from a scoring perspective help lead to different levels of flow. The first level of flow is that you have to follow the rules to clear the stage. This is the part where you're just engaged with the task of adding things, seeing the UI update, and knowing that you're making the right choices to get through and finish the level. Now the second level of flow comes from juggling the first 2 priorities. So there's a first priority of clearing the level versus the second priority of getting an S rank. So there's times where it may be in your interest to do a certain kind of move or change the music in some way to fulfill a rule of music making. However, at that time, you could be about to lose some health, and you might have to break that rule in the interest of making it through to the next section before you run out of gas. And the third level of flow here comes when you have to juggle all 3 of the priorities. So now you're thinking, how much more health do I have before the audience gets too tired and has to leave, versus how do I fulfill these rules of music making so I get an S rank? And then on top of that, can I stick some of these DJ tricks in here to help me get as many points as possible to get a maximum high score for bragging rights? There's also additional interactions which we add for periods of downtime. So the way that Hexagroove changes is that it's not the same kind of modality all through the course of a stage, which I'll talk about in a second. A bonus for this is there's also music and visual effects. This comes into the feedback, which services all 3 levels of the flow. So here we have the interface of Hexagroove, and you can see the main part of the UI in the center, the most important real estate. You have a number of circles around in this disk. There's 5 blue circles right now. One is a drum, then a hi-hat, a bass, a chord, and a lead. And these 5 instruments are playing. And 4 of these instruments are giving this kind of purple energy which is flowing into the center of the screen. We call this euphoria. So every instrument that you add gives an amount of energy to the crowd which gets them more excited. So the player has to add these at the right time, but not too often and not too rarely, that it gives energy to propel the stage forward. Every time you fill this pink ball up in the center, you move on to the next section of the song. And while you're working on this, you can keep an eye on your progress through the stage by looking at these gauges in the upper left-hand corner. The first one is the health, and the health is constantly decreasing because we're doing a simulation of how the audience can both be physically tired by the music you're playing, as well as intellectually tired by the variety of what you're playing right now. And then the other 2 gauges show you how well you're doing with a combo or the progression towards the end of the song. And on the right, you have grading messages which come out. So here we have 2 tricks and a grading message. The green one tells you that you've done a good job of adding music at a 4-bar increment, and then the other 2 with the B and the A are those skateboarding type tricks which I was telling you before. By adding or removing music points at a certain point in time and adding them back in, it's throttling the energy level of the crowd, which is something that a DJ would use to keep everyone engaged. So when the payoff all comes together, you end up in these very fantastic stages where here we can see the player has 8 instruments, they're contributing to the euphoria, there's a heart being projected on the bottom of the crowd, there's fireworks going off, these geometric patterns on screens in the background and the messages, and everything in this game is synchronized to the music. So the better you do, the more lights flicker and flash and go on, and the more excited the environment comes for the music that you're playing. So one thing we found while working on this was that having just purely the strategic part was very satisfying to some players, but other players got a little bored with it and wanted more variety. They're like, is this all I'm going to do? So we found that actually taking one level, which is between 3 and 5 minutes, and breaking it up into sections, and then putting different kinds of skills required between each of these sections was very satisfying to people. So there's mini games that come between song sections. You're either playing a drum roll by tapping to the beat, or you're filtering out audio frequencies by driving this ship along a curve in space, and it works on 2 different kinds of thoughts. So you have a physical demanding part of the game between each of these strategic and thinking parts of the game. And on top of that, even for people that are kind of fidgety and wanted to have something physical to do at all times, we added this beach ball. So when there's no moves left on the board, so to speak, when everything is blue and you can't do anything else with the music and have to just let it sit for a little while. This beach ball flies out, and you can juggle it around in the crowd to the beat, so it gives you something to tap along to until the music has changed such that the crowd starts asking for something new. So, is there flow in Hexagroove? Thankfully, we can say that the response that we got both critically and from our customers was very positive. We ended up hearing lots of words like engaging, satisfying, joyous, and zen. A lot of the things that we found in the literature that is required for creating a flow-like experience. We even have a freestyle mode where some people have been known to play endlessly, just changing music and juggling the ball around without having to be focused on actually clearing the level. So the actual core experience of the feedback and the music itself can produce a state of flow. So to recap, music needs to have constraints, otherwise it can't be a game because it's too freeform and it's not approachable for most players. So we add constraints to music, we add a series of rules that the player can be graded on while giving them freedom still to make their own music, and then give them multiple levels of simultaneous goals to achieve. And having these multiple levels of goals can induce flow for both novice and advanced players. The distillation of this challenge and the feedback can also produce flow. So the actual skills required in just the physical parts or the strategy part, as well as the payoff you get, reinforce those series of flow zones which the player receives. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you had a good experience listening to this, and I'm always happy to give you any more information. You can reach me out on Twitter or come by our website and learn more about Hexagroove. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Hello, good day everyone. My name is GunDo from Xsolla. I'm here to introduce our business model for your game. Many people think of us as PG or payment solution company. In fact, our main source of revenue comes from payment fees, so the main business would certainly be right. But it would be more appropriate to say that it is the provider of the service needed for game developers' own global publishing. Of course, for the online games, there is a powerful platform called Steam, and on the mobile, there are market platforms such as Google Play Store and Apple App Store. Most companies launch on these markets, and for some cases, they receive features. However, it's not that easy for your game to be noticed by many users. If you are planning to integrate Xsolla service on your games, you can launch through these platforms and easily launch on your own webpage at the same time. The elements needed for this would be: number 1, a landing page for the sales and distribution. Number 2, marketing for recruiting users. Number 3, payment solutions. And lastly, legal or tax affairs and CS. Let me focus on real-world examples of how Xsolla's existing partners are doing. Developers who do not have a web page, very easy and simple site builder tool is ready for them. Don't worry about web hosting costs for a domain. Just be with us. I will briefly guide you about the distribution method for each platform. First, PC. I assume that most of developers will upload their P2P games on Steam. In that case, you will use Steam Key Sales, one of Xsolla's store functions, and you can individually sell Steam Key from your website with a very simple linkage. And Steam allows developers to sell or distribute their own game keys, so you can save 30% on the platform fee paid to Steam. Our website has the greatest significance not only for the distribution and sale of games, but also for the formation of communities. Steam users aren't the developers' traffic after all. So most Western PC game developers who is aware of this point are building and distributing their own websites using Xsolla solutions. Let me show you Ready or Not as a representative example. It was produced through our site builder, and if requested, we can also customize the website according to developers' internal schedule. In addition, through pre-order, it is used as a kind of crowdfunding, which Ready or Not has been through, and it has been successfully launched. Many of the indie developers here may also face financial problems, and I recommend following this step. And let's move to mobile market now. In fact, unlike Western countries, most of Asian developers are focusing at mobile game service, and more than 90% of our Chinese partners service mobile games. Chinese developers accept third-party payment very naturally, while I remember that Korean developers gave me hundreds of questions about what to do if they lose any opportunity for Google featured. However, the biggest reason developers deploy third-party payment bills separately is because they know how huge the share of payment is in the global market. The conversion rate is not high except for the United States, Korea, and Europe, as there are no payment methods supported by Google except for credit cards, mobile payments, or gift cards. I'll come back with this in more details later. So let's classify 3 ways to use Xsolla in mobile games. The first one is to download the APK file directly. And at the time of payment in the in-app store, Xsolla Mobile Pay Station appears, and users can easily select the payment method they want. We'll show you on the screen later. The other is like the first one, but a little bit different. Like the familiar Fortnite Mobile, you can download the launcher first and then manage updates through the launcher. It seems to be a little more manageable than downloading the APK file directly, but it is not necessary to develop the launcher. The last method is to distribute the game through Google and Apple and induce the generated game ID to be entered the payment web page. It is a method that Chinese companies use a lot when it comes to game service, especially in Southeast Asia. As you can see on the screen, we have a solution called Mobile Cross Pay. You can generate more revenue through direct distribution and sales to users. Mobile Cross Pay is a complete set of mobile-friendly tools and services that make it easier to grow your gaming business. The solution eliminates operational and sales friction, so you can increase revenue globally and build a user community. In some ways, it may not be very big, but there seems to be no reason to give up 10 to 15% of extra sales through this. If you have decided on the distribution method, the next concern will be that, well, let's say Steam and Google Store have a lot of users, of course. So how on earth are you going to bring users to your website? So I would like to introduce a program called Xsolla Partner Network. The Partner Network is basically a tool to help promoting partners' game to over 4,000 streamers and 50 affiliates around the world registered in the Xsolla system. In the case of ordinary advertising campaigns, there will be difficulties for developers as they must pay as much as they execute regardless of performance. It was a problem I've always faced when I was in developer side. However, for this partner network, developers don't have to pay anything in front, and they share revenue with the influencer in RS. In other words, if the matched influencer broadcasts hard and generates big sales, it will be shared with you reasonably. In other hand, if the sales are extremely zero, there's no need to pay even if the streamer broadcasts for thousands of hours. and Xsolla only serves to settle this as a middleman and does not incur any additional cost. Recently, through a strategic partnership with Keymailer, an American influencer platform that has 650,000 global streamers, Xsolla partners can easily connect with Keymailer to promote your games through 650,000 influencers. Now I want to tell you about the most important element, the payment. I also met a lot of developers, and only a few people were aware of the importance of payment when going global. PayStation, which is Xsolla's payment solution, provides 130 currencies and more than 700 payment methods in more than 200 countries. Well, imagine that you're contracting with these 700 different payment methods. Whoa, impossible. Besides, it will be a huge challenge from the linkage work. As you know, Southeast Asia, Russia, and South America have a large population and a very large number of game users. However, as most of developers have noticed, it is also an area where payments are not occurring much. As a result of looking at the approximate statistics of our partners, we believe that the BU rate has increased 20 to 25% on a before and after basis. Let's be simple. If the number of users who originally paid was 100, it has increased up to 120 to 125 users. Aside from this, Xsolla is faithfully following legal regulations in countries around the world and country-specific regulations including GDPR, so developers don't have to worry about it. Xsolla also pays taxes directly to the countries where VAT or sales tax exist. Lastly, regarding the payment-related CS, which is the hardest and most important part of CS, is available 24/7 at the Xsolla Customer Center, so developers only need to focus on developing your fun games for users. You can also check all sales data via dashboard in detail. For example, you can check which payment method is used in which country in real time. And on the screen, you'll see our payment method page. You can pay by cash or gift cards. So the things I've been telling you may not be essential for developers, for every developers. However, I think there is no reason for you to refuse to self-service the game using Xsolla. I guess it is the most efficient method without risk to increase sales and promote your games at the same time. So if you have more questions, please feel free to contact me via email and I will assist you in more details.